Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm chatting today about the Leica M11 and batteries, battery life, a few things that I've noticed and tricks that I do when I'm shooting a wedding day, specifically for preserving the battery life on this wonderful camera called the M11. I look like a freaking camp counselor today. All right, let's jump right in. So these batteries, great start. I have 3 of them. The camera obviously comes with one already. When I bought the camera, I purchased the second backup one because I know Leica. No surprise, the third battery came very shortly after the second and first ones, because as I got to shooting some weddings with these, I realized the necessity for a third battery, a nice little family of batteries to take with me. The battery itself, I mean, I don't think it's really that exciting. It's not the sexiest battery in the world. It has typical battery stuff. There's no base plate. It just slides right in. I've always appreciated just the quick pop-up. Charging this battery itself, this is what I carry with me literally all the time because I'm constantly charging these batteries. I will say I try to keep a battery in it when I'm traveling with it because I feel like I did break one of those prongs already just from putting it in a bag and going along my merry little way. I love this battery charger because I can also very easily charge a cell phone if I'm in a pinch and I left my phone charger in the rental car or something or another. I don't have it. It's really nice to have this cord. I think it was a really smart decision from Leica to be able to do USB-C because it kind of works for everything these days. Yeah, even if I don't get to the third battery, I am almost always having to find an outlet to charge just to have it on standby or have it ready just in case. Leaving the battery in a wall is one of those things I really struggle to remember. I did leave this at a wedding this year. I was pre-charging for the next day's wedding. I did a very good thing by doing that, but then a very bad thing by leaving it. Luckily, I reached out to the DJ. He saved the battery pack for me, gave it to the catering manager, and it was just happened to be on my way back traveling the next day after the next day. So I got to pick it up and it was fine. Not ideal. It's kind of unfortunate that I have to have a battery that I have to bring a charger with me on the day, but it's fine. I realize very much I'm in the minority. This is not the first choice for most people to shoot weddings on. However, I do use this as my main camera for a wedding day still. About 70% of the wedding day, give or take, I'm using this camera body. It's the camera of choice. I have so many reasons. I did a whole video on it a couple years back. I have now shot probably close to 90 weddings and elopements with this camera. I've seen a lot of things with it. I've experienced a lot just using it. Excited just to share like a few things about what I do to preserve the battery. I'm sorry if they are a bit obvious, but the first one is turning off the camera when you're not using it. I do this a lot. There's kind of an art to turning the camera off and knowing when you don't need it for a moment. I find in moments like riding up and down an elevator, if I'm switching venues, sometimes I go to 2 or 3 different places on a wedding day. Obviously, I'm turning off the camera for those times. If I'm using like a really big set on film, I will reach over and turn this camera off. You can put it on the sleep mode. However, I just make the mental note of just turning off the camera altogether. In the style that I like to shoot weddings, I will say it is a little tricky to actually turn this camera off. The moments are constantly happening in front of me, and I always have this urge to be ready and be prepared for the moment as it's happening. So it is tricky, but I do find that preserving battery that is the #1 easiest way to preserve the battery life if you're using it for any prolonged period of time is just to simply turn the camera off. Great. Another great way to preserve the battery life on the M11 is to not use the live view. I started playing around with this this year. It is the realest struggle. I'm using live view so often to frame pretty much every shot that I'm doing. I'm just looking for the composition. Maybe I'm finding it within the live view. Maybe I'm just double checking my work. Maybe I'm making sure it's even so that I have less work to do in editing. Ceremony, I'll kind of know what I'm doing and what I want. I see it very clearly within the camera so that I can kind of not be so attached to the live view. Same with like little candid moments of guests at cocktail hour or running around different things. There are a few moments, and I've been pushing myself to use live view less, but especially for like my couples portraits, it's just a crutch I have. I just love seeing the frame lines. If you don't use live view, it does significantly improve the battery life of your camera. So those are kind of like the two obvious things that I think about actively on wedding days for preserving the battery life of this camera. Modes could be an interesting way to preserve battery. I get annoyed when I'm taking pictures and it like is taking a second and third picture when you do like the low speed or high speed continuous modes. So I've just always used single mode. I can't speak to if that helps battery life or not. It could be something to consider. I would imagine if you were doing burst mode, rapid fire on this camera, I would imagine that would have a toll on the battery. I will say when I'm using the self-timer mode, doing some self-portrait work, I have seen significant use of the battery. The good news is I'm not doing 8 hours of self-portraits using the Leica Photos app. With the camera, I at times have felt the camera like get a little warm. I wouldn't say that I'm using like a fully charged battery when I start that. I'm usually doing a leftover battery from something I shot on a wedding day. That may factor in. It is using significant battery when it's on self-timer and like hooked up to the remote shooting on the Leica's Photos app. I feel like I'm talking fast. Hopefully everything can be kept up here. When I'm using this for a wedding day, I'm not really going into the gadgets too much. You know, I'm not changing resolutions on things. I'm not changing shutter types. All these like extra controls, I'm really not touching them. So I can't say that significant battery is used from just like going into the gadgets. The main functions I'm using on a wedding day are changing the shutter speed. I'm constantly doing that and constantly changing my ISO, which again, I have the feature set up, the custom button where I can easily press and change my ISO. That is not using significant battery on this camera. Weather. I did a wedding this year. I arrived at the venue. My car said it was 106 degrees. Pretty toasty. And it should be no surprise that the camera and batteries did not fare that well. And to be fair, none of us fared that well. In that case, I could tell my camera like getting warm. I could feel the whole body warming up from, and it wasn't even in direct sun. It was just the immense amount of heat of the day. In that instance, it was the only time this year it overheated so much that I turned off the camera, I took the battery out and put it in the bag inside the venue so that it could cool down and rest and be ready for the rest of the day. Obviously, the heat drains the battery life, but also just like the overall well-being of the camera. Extreme heat is no bueno. Same thing in cold weather. I haven't shot a wedding in frigid, really freezing temperatures yet. Any kind of extreme weather, the batteries, it's just an electronic thing. It's not a Leica thing. Those are kind of the main things. I hope this was like helpful or like at least gave you thought about how you should be thinking about battery life. I think it was worth doing a video to talk about the things that I do personally to help preserve it. Obviously, there's not much that can be done. If you're using live view like I am, I would much rather choose my artistry and like composing my images in the way that I can see them on the screen versus like, oh no, I gotta save the battery. I don't want to plug it in. I don't want to be limited in what I'm doing. I am continuing to use the M11 and I love connecting and hearing about your stories with it. I feel like a lot of people have been encouraged to to try out this camera and have been more curious about it that connect with me, and I think that is so exciting. But yeah, so these are the batteries. This is the M11, and this was my video for preserving battery life on the Leica M11. Okay.